Hey there, everybody. Good morning. 1 minute prior. Hold on a second. We'll get stuff set up here. I want to welcome everybody to the stream, and we will get rolling with any of your questions or comments. If you do have a log or anything you wanted me to take a look at, you can get onto the Discord, the UAV Tech Discord, and I will drop a link to that here in the chat. And you can upload that and take a look at it. I can figure out how to upload or link. Hold on a second. Announcements. Welcome. Create an invitation link. Person invite. Where's the invitation link? I guess it's just a copy button. And put that right here in the chat. There we go. Send that off. Of course, if you are a patron and you want to throw it in the office hours, I will be making sure to keep a look at that and generally answer any questions folks have. I do have a log up here that I can start to go through, but of course, if you're on the chat here, more than happy to address any of your questions live here as we go. Let me check my email address here as well. Yeah. All right, so I have that pulled up. Okie dokie. So with that said, good day. Hey, Brandon, how are you doing today? Hopefully folks it's a nice day in the northeast part of the country. So hopefully folks are getting out and about, and we got Super Bowl tonight. So go Eagles. I'm from Eastern Pennsylvania, so we'll be rooting for the Eagles tonight. I think my youngest has a Chiefs jersey, so we'll see where he goes. I think he's going to be rooting for the underdog, which I believe is going to be the Chiefs. So we'll see how that goes. But should be interesting. Should be interesting tonight. Trying to get them to go to sleep too if the game lasts longer than it should, which most of the time they do. All right. Slovakia. Wow, look at you go. That's so you were in the later part of the afternoon, Fail Force Squad. Welcome, welcome to the stream. We do have somebody here from the Czech Republic that uploaded a log, so we'll be taking a look at that. And did reach out to Bot Grinder as well over the weekend. I saw his video and looking for help for looking for sites in Pennsylvania for his FPV park. So extended a helping hand out to there. I know a bunch of in my profession. I know a bunch. My company has offices across the state, and we know realtors and stuff like that. So we'll see what he's looking for. I know about like site permitting and everything. So I think he's looking for some. What do he say in here? You see his email here without sharing his email. He's looking for State College, Harrisburg would be great areas. Anything that's 250-mile radius from Philly. He's looking for raw hunting land, but the trick with that is raw hunting land is going to have a lot of trees on it, and cutting down trees ain't free. It's expensive. So yeah, it's like finding hunting land that basically has farm fields on it, I would think. Or sparsely wooded. Because heavily wooded, I mean, normal hunting land in Pennsylvania is completely woods. I would assume he's going to look at. I was trying to figure out how he's going to deal with sewer and water because people are going to have to go to the bathroom. I guess just porta potties, but that again, you have to pay for that. It's not free. Maybe just toilet paper in the woods, everybody. So we'll see how it goes. All right. Oh, toroidal props. Yeah. So one question we have here is Dino FPV asks, "What are your thoughts on toroidal props?" Everything looks like to me it's a gimmick. It doesn't sound any quieter. I was thinking about 3D printing them up, but then it seemed cliche maybe to jump on that bandwagon. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's something that'll get a bunch of clicks and people see it and it will die off. At the end of the day, when you move air, I deal with wastewater plants too in my profession, and when you move air, it's loud. That's all there is to it. Even air pumps, blowers, it's all loud. So yeah, they got to reduce the yeah. It's our ice bucket challenge, Brandon's buckets. Yeah, maybe. I have to hand that off, right? Somebody handed it. I dare Mark to try the toroidal props. I don't have any. I guess people were having some success with 3D printing them with silk TPU or something like that. I just have TPU plus. I think silk is just shinier. I don't know that there's all that difference. So I could print them out in 3 TPU plus and give them a see how that looks. It's a kind of a higher grade, higher heat TPU, which I think is kind of close to silk. What else Brandon Bean have up here? Brandon's asking, I have an AOS 5 LR, an AOS LR5 long range that has a very strong resonance at 250 hertz, and it is so strong that the dynamic notch can't effectively address it, and it must be static notches. Have you seen this before? No, I have not. Is it? How many notches do you have on there, Brandon? I would think, and then don't get too high on your Q factor. A Q of 500 for the static or the dynamic notch is pretty high. So if it's a more broad-based peak, you might need to get that Q down to 300. I know you know your stuff when it comes to this, so I'm just wondering if you might have tried that or not. But usually the dynamic notch would jump on it. I've really never, I would turn on more static notches than, or more dynamic notches than add a static. But a static truly, obviously, if it's a resonance and it's like at one spot, then yeah, static would free up the dynamic to not just obviously sit on top of it. So I'm guessing that's what you found kind of works best on that? Question mark. Yeah, he says the same thing. I normally don't use the static notches. Normally it would work fine, but this spike is so strong it leaves too much behind. That's surprising. It's that strong. I mean, if it's got to be more dispersed then and not peaked, because if it's peaked, I mean the notch filter will attenuate down uh, theoretically right at the center to infinity, like to zero. Um, so it must be like getting through on the sides, I would think. Single notch, 250 here. Yeah, new notches. Throw a bunch of notches on it tomorrow. Yeah, give that a shot. Throw a bunch on. Just add a couple more dynamics, throw off the static, and see how that works. So here. Oh, you're saying a dyno FPV. People aren't crushing these. 90% throttle with the toroidal props. That's a high amount of throttle. So they're not putting off as much thrust. You would think, I mean, I saw somebody, I saw Quad Mover did and got a bunch of views on his thing. I did see somebody else do a video and they didn't mention like excessive amounts of throttle. Uh, it was like, can it be modded or something? There was a channel like, can it be modded? Um, I watched that one. I think he said it had to have some higher throttle, but he didn't make it seem like that crazy. It'd be interesting. It would be interesting if somebody would. I mean, it's easy said. Injection molding to make the mold is kind of, from what I understand, it's expensive. So it would be interesting to have a proper toroidal prop, not a 3D printed. I mean, 3D printing is like not really the best idea for a prop. So if somebody would do it properly with a mold and spend some time and make sure it's balanced, that would be interesting. So, all right. Well, as people filter in here, I'm going to pull up this log and take a look at it here. And like I said, if you have any um, logs you want to take a look at or any information, you can, if you're a patron, obviously just throw it here in the office hours. We're going to take a look at this one. We can also go up here just into the general chat or get help or whichever. Tag me and we can take a look at that. I guess there is a live stream. No, that's for audio. I guess I don't have a live stream on here. So nevertheless, throw in any ones and just give me a tag and I can take a look at that. Otherwise, you can email me at theuavtech at outlook.com and with your log or whatever you want, and I can take a look at it. That's a couple ways to transmit stuff. All right, let's pull this up. I see some questions coming in. We'll let those queue up a little bit and I'll take a look at this one. So, office hours. This one was a little bit ago. And basically, it's just a general log review. I'm not sure to set up feed forward. Any recommendations? So, it's here we go. This is the Logaruni. You can see we'll turn off smoothing there and take a quick glance around. We'll hit the drop down here, go do our noise plot one. And if you're very new to any of this black box stuff, you can of course always go to, some of this might be over your head because I'm not going to explain black box in all kinds of great depth, but you can always go to the uavtech.com/black box. And that will have some videos on black box and how to kind of look at these lines, because it's more than just this talks about how the software works, but then also how to look at the lines, 5 steps of what you'd want to do for a good log review. And then here's the UAV tech trace templates here to download as well. So that's there. So in this log, looks like we do have some raw noise got on it. Looks like it's a Nazgul 5 F5. Nazgul F5 is the name. Betaflight 4.4. And looks like the anti-grav. What if I have an old black box Explorer? I probably have to get the next, download the next one. Some decent PIDs. Looks like, to me, looks like he has my preset applied. That's about the D terms for that. I have to, he has a little bit of D max going, so it's not exactly the preset. But he has some decent, a little bit heavier quad. Has the tracking kind of lower though. So there's this, yeah, this is a custom tune. This is not my preset, sorry. But it does have the D's bumped up, which is indicating it's kind of a heavier quad to be needing to do something like that. And see if there's anything else I notice on here. Looks like he's using dynamic idle, 4,000 RPM for idle. And filtering. Looks like he has the low pass 1 turned off, just has the low pass 2 enabled, no static notches, RPM filter on, and 3 dynamic notches, and then a fairly, I would say, it's not a super aggressive filtering for D term, so that's fairly normal. Anything else that jumps out? And then the feed forward terms at 201. So we'll just take a look at the raw noise performance on this sucker. See what, how'd you find 2.2? So trying to answer just a quick question here as we're pulling this up. In your personal opinion, how much did you find going from 4.2 tuning to 4.3 plus? Do you notice any difference for how you would normally tune? No, the tuning's all the same. I mean, it's PIDs, all the PID controllers used are the same. It could be, that's why, this thing where I can tune, I'll hear people say like, well, I can tune, I'll pick on Falco. I can tune race flight, but I can't tune Betaflight. Or I can tune whatever, emu flight, but I can't tune Betaflight. It's like, well, then you don't know how to tune because it's all the same. You know the basis of how the P to D balance works and the I to P balance. Everything's the same. So I guess to answer that question, I mean, the parameters are a little different. The sliders work differently between 4.2 to 4.3 and 4.4. Well, 4.3 and 4.4 are the exact same, but 4.2 to 4.3, the sliders changed. But the fundamentals are all the same. So if you do have any questions on that kind of thing, then the fundamentals I'm talking about, again, just go to the uavtech.com and you'd be interested in, you would think fundamentals, but tuning right here, and click on that one. And the fundamentals I'm speaking of are kind of this, but more encapsulated directly in this video. So take a short look at that video. It's not very long. I think it's only like 10 minutes, so it's worth your time. And it talks about the key relationships between the terms, and then the sliders just help facilitate that. And then this is some stuff that demonstrates how once you have those relationships locked, you can move all the terms up and all the terms down, and how it does not affect, obviously, the relationships between the terms. Like, this is basically the proof that what this is saying is not an opinion. This is a fact. This is the data that backs up the facts in this, like the fact of how PID's tunings work. So it works like that in all firmwares, no matter what. Anything that uses PID control. So yeah, check that out. All right, so this pulled up quick, and I'll look for questions here as we're going again. Raw noise performance looks decent on roll. Let's do pitch. And yaw. See if this is actually updating. Doesn't seem like it's updating. Come on. There it goes. So pitch, roll, yaw. When I'm looking at what when I'm saying it looks decent, I'm looking again in between this area here. It's a little slow. Why is this? Right here, this area here, to make sure between like 50 hertz and 150 hertz that there's no big amounts of noise right here. I don't really care how high this is. if this is super high, but it's peaked now, Brandon, earlier in the live stream, we were talking about Brandon has it. It's so much noise that he's had to put some aggressive notching. That's I find that kind of rare, but it could happen, especially on a long range like a bigger quads. That's where they get that. That could be a thing. But generally, as long as this trough is here, I call this a trough because this is the quad movement down here. This is the key right here between 50 and 150. As long as there's no noise there on roll, pitch, and yaw, you're good. And then the noise up top, the peaks up top here, it really generally doesn't matter how high they get. You can see here in the shapes like that stuff, it doesn't really matter. So again, just as long as we have that. So that looks fine. And then you can kind of see these little red lines are, that's just doing a plot of that. He's asking specifically about feed forward, so let's flip over. I usually take just a gander to see if there's anything, you know, obvious or weird. You can also see just down here by like this is the D term right there. You can't see that. See that's the D term right there. That D term is well within its control. Now, I don't know. We have a little bit of stuff here. Usually you want to use the O key to crop that out, especially if you're doing that analysis that I just did, noise analysis. So pulling that out of there, back to here, it's taking a second. There it goes. The only thing I fear here is I don't see any really sharp moves. So if I go back to this stick tracking setup of trace templates here, which I have to give it a second. It seems like it's pausing a lot. I don't know if I see too many sharp moves. One thing to be cautious about here, if you see something like this, I guess that's okay. But if you do see anytime your motors are, I don't know the specific move, but if you see your motors are splitting apart a lot, I'm assuming there's some wind or something that he's fighting against, and then that's normal. But if there's no wind and if it's like a straight punch out, these should kind of all be fair. This is a little spread out. But if there's some wind and stuff, then that's fine. Don't worry about it. But if there's no wind and it's kind of straight up, then it shouldn't be split like that. That would be a sign that one of your motors is weak and there's some problem with it. And the weak motor, again, everything's kind of reversed when you look at the motor commands. Just going back to here, so you'd see this. If you do see this and you see like a big split in your motors and it's straight up and there's no wind and stuff like that, your weak motor is the one that's at 100%. It's not what it's giving, it's what it's being commanded. So if it's commanding higher for a certain motor, that means that that motor's not producing enough thrust. So you can see in this one, it's motor 1 is kind of the weak. I wouldn't say it's the weak motor. It's in this case, it's limiting how much thrust, and it could be because of wind and things like that. So these others are spooling down by, almost 20%, 5%, things like that. So you're not getting all the thrust out of these other 3 motors because of this one. Now, if that's, again, due to wind or quads in a weird orientation when that's happening, then ignore it. Kind of looking here for some sharp moves. That's what I'm peeking for. And that's the key with this stuff. If you really want to evaluate a tune, you got to do sharp moves. This tune looks a little high. Little. Let's see here. I don't know what we're moving to here, but this would be an indication of prop wash if he's going into a prop wash move. And this is where HD and logs together, you can kind of see what's going on. Like I have no idea what is actually happening here, if the quad is like going backwards into its own draft or not. Generally, I guess just to get to the crux of the question is, how is my feed forward? Well, basically I'm trying to look for these green lines are the set point, the commands. This is where the quad is actually doing. So we're trying to get the gyro to match the set point. That's what the little flying computer is doing for you. When those two match, that's your most consistent feel you're going to get. So you can see they're matching right there, what he's commanding and what he's getting. And then there's really no command up top here. So that's matching. If they are not matching in sharp moves, you got to increase feed forward. So basically I'm scrubbing along here, and you can see slightly off there, but that's not a very sharp move. You can see they're going here, matching pretty well. So that's kind of where you're looking now. The only thing I don't know, this is not a great log to evaluate this because I don't see any really sharp moves. He's kind of just flying around, which is most of the time that's what we're actually just doing. But to specifically evaluate a tune, here's kind of a sharp move. It's not that sharp though. So for this flight, for this type of flying that this log is capturing, I would say feed forward is fine. The feed forward values he has here are fine. The low 200 range is what he has. The slider value, he has 1.2 for the feed forward. And it's, again, there's not any situations where he's putting in sharp moves. Now, to really test that, the best thing to do is get out there and really just do some sharp moves. So basically, to some extent, do the sharpest moves that you would do for enjoyment. And the best way to look is if it feels connected and locked, then you're good. If it doesn't, you want it to feel a little sharper, then increase your stick tracking slider, I think it's called. Yeah, stick tracking. And that will make the, or stick response, that will make the stick response feel more sharper in the quad. So that is that. Getting back to some of these. Questions here. John Solo, welcome. See, you're saying complete beginner. So yeah, check out those links I put up there earlier about the / UAV tech tuning. So it's uavtech.com / tuning. Check out that video. You gotta start there. That understanding is key. Hey, or All Mac FPV asks, hey UAV Tech, I'm planning on pairing an old Maytech F405 FC with an old Success ESC with, can't read it too well here, with the current sensor wire. Maytech doesn't. I can run that wire to a UART enable ESC on that port and call it a day? Yes. So yeah, the current sensing. No, I don't think you can. I don't think you can just run that to any UART. I think you have to have a current input on your flight controller. I'm pretty sure. So you're gonna have to run it to a specific pad on that Maytech flight controller. Let me pull up Betaflight here. And I think your limiting factor will be that Betaflight doesn't. Let me double check in the ports tab. I've never had to do that. Usually they just have a current sensing pad. So if we pull up the configurator here, pull up the ports, it'd be here, it'd be sensors. Yeah, normally for like the ESC stuff, I guess if it's going through ESC telemetry, then yes. If you're getting the current, like it's the individual ESC current, wired up to a UART, it'd be the TX should go to RX on the flight controller and then set that UART, whichever one it is, to ESC. But I don't know if it's, usually you're wiring that to a current pad on that flight controller. So I don't see any of the current options here. So if it depends if it's part of the ESC telemetry that you're getting that or not. Pull this back up to here. You hear about what's wrong with the quad once you. Yeah, absolutely. Somebody was saying a bunch of Chinese symbols. I don't know who that person is, but they're on here. I've seen them around many times. The you can kind of hear your quad after a while, and you know if something's off. Batteries, but Brandon says he's completely changed his tuning approach. Not gonna lie, coming to 4.3 from 4.2. I wanted a faster method. The way the sliders have changed really lends to this method, D first method. So he goes. So Brandon's talking about in here. I got to really plug in a flight controller to show this. I mean, at the end of the day, the fundamentals are the same. But it's talking about moving this, basically you're moving this this damping slider. Oh, I got to change to here. He's talking about moving this damping slider as basically up as far as you can. Then from there, moving your tracking slider up as far as you can. This damping slider, you'll get to a spot where it will start to flutter. It'll make you'll hear it. It'll get, either motors get hot or it gets a fluttery sound. And then that's kind of where you need to be. You might want to back it off a couple points from where you get to that point. And then the tracking slider, you keep moving this up until it starts to overshoot, or you start to hear the overshoot, most likely where it will be like, whoa. You'll hear it at the end, and you'll start to kind of see it in the HD. You'll think like, oh, did I just see a little overshoot? But then when you play it slow, like if you get some HD and then slow it down in the playback, you'll see that little bit of bounce back. It'll be really quick. And then from there, you just adjust your tracking slider to the desired stick feel. Like if you're making sharp inputs and you feel like, it feels a little laggy, I feel like it could be a little bit sharper, more tight, more connected to, my inputs, then you just crank this sucker up. So that's kind of the going down from the top down, and that's why they're kind of in this order. At the end of the day, you have this, just like that video shows, you have the D term, P term. You're trying to get them in balance. You can see this one adjusts the D gains. This one adjusts the P, and it takes the I along for the ride. So we didn't really talk about the I term yet. And then the stick response. This I term, you can see that this slider here, the tracking slider, adjusts the P and the I gains. The I term has a huge window in Betaflight, just because of some of the additional features that it has, like basically I term relax is the one. So if you would be moving this up, or at any point the quad kind of wobbles around a little bit, it's usually not a problem for high powered quads like 5-inch and below, but for something like this, it could be an issue where these are actually fairly high powered, but something like a Cinewhoop, then you can get a little wobbly, have that issue, and you turn this up as basically high as it can go, and you get a little bounce back. Then you can come in here and reduce this drift wobble slider. So you move it this way, it'll get a little bit closer to, it might feel a little drifty. You go up closer to the wobble side, it might feel a little bit more wobbly. So, but yeah, I named these. Like I did this. I came up with this. And then these all these explanations, like I drafted all that stuff. There's input from other people, but the initial naming and then drafting of all these explanations. It's my contribution to the project, amongst some other things, but that was a contribution. Big got here. What else we got here? Uh, Hockey Round says, thanks everyone for what they do after watching much of the videos over and over. So, multiple views, I guess, is good, right? I'm able to fly my budget 400 millimeter build with confidence. It won't fall out of the sky. So that's great to hear. I'm glad. It's good to see people are having fun. That's the goal here. Obviously, it's a hobby. Uh, Presets. Uh, Willie FPV, I'm gonna go with that. I think that's what he's going for. Said that must admit that the existing presets are very good. I don't have to tune much of my quads anymore. Yeah, totally agreed. Um, the presets in there are nowadays are, they should get you like 80% of the way there. Um, and sometimes they're like 100%. It depends on your build, right? Is it more average? These are all tuned to using a specific quad or set of quads that people have, right? And experience. Like I know in mine, like I've tuned a bunch of 2-inch to 4-inch quads for myself and for other people professionally and stuff like that. Same thing for whoops and all of them, all the classes. So I'm using like an average of those tunes. Like, okay, I've noticed these patterns. They all seem to have this, but with that, I also then back them off a little bit so they're not too aggressive. Like in a professional tune where I'm tuning somebody's specific quad, I would it wouldn't just be the default. It would be I usually start with that honestly, and then kind of bring it in. They usually have a specific issue. People don't come out for a professional tune if they loaded a preset already and it works fine. They usually have loaded a preset or it's just not. So they're kind of farther on the margins. And they usually have wobble issues or other things. So a lot of times, sometimes it's build issues. Send me a log or I get the quads here and then I'll notice mechanical issues. Most of them that send the quads in, like they send me the quad to tune, most of the time, I wouldn't say most of the time, but I guess 50% of the time. It seems like half the time. Let's go with at least half the time. There's some sort of mechanical problem that really needs to be addressed. So that's what's there. So then I pinpoint what that is. In some cases, I just fixed it. In other cases, I have to work with them, see what they want to do. Like the one guy's, it took me a little bit, but I figured out like his capacitor. It was on, his quad was flying fine, then it wasn't flying fine anymore. So he was struggling with it for a long time. Then he blah 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 sent it in, and the capacitor, how they have the hard two legs. Well, they kind of broke loose of the solder joint. Didn't seem like it, but and kind of stumbled across it, and that was causing all kinds of electrical noise. I guess it was vibrating enough. It seemed tight, but it was just vibrating enough that. So I remelted the joint, and then it was fine. And I tuned it up real good and sent it back. So, anyways, these presets, if you haven't tried them, yeah, give them a shout. Um, if you have tried these presets specifically for mine, I would appreciate anybody going into the Discord if you're a Discord kind of person, or just emailing me at theuvtech at outlook.com and let me know your experience with the preset. I want to get these from experimental to community and official. They basically have to have feedback. So I have a bunch of feedback on some of these, like the standard, the freestyle GoPro. That seems, I mean, I didn't really change it all that much from 4.3, just made it a little nicer. Um, just to set up a little, little nicer on the interface here, a little nicer with some filter options, things like that. So I have feedback on that, and then the larger ones, let me go to here. The like the 6 and 7 inch, people are getting. I received some feedback on that. A lot of times it's just YouTube comments on a video or whatnot. So I'm going to use those to get those pushed up. But if you've used any of these other ones like the micro, got some feedback on that too. Whoop, or any of the 10-inch, that's kind of more rare. So if you do have a 10-inch and you tried this out, I'd love to get your feedback on it. Things like that. Cine lifters, those are a little bit more outside the fringe there too. All right, back to the comments. So Almac FPV said he just noticed a CRT. Yes, that is probably the pad. The the critical race theory. No, the CRT pad is probably the current pad that you need to wire that to on your flight controller. So just take that. Just make sure, as long as you're not going to hurt anything, because it's just a signal. As long as you're not taking VBAT, basically, or voltage pads. Do never take voltage pads to a UART or that current pad. That current pad is the one. You're not going to hurt anything. So the communications wires can kind of go anywhere, and it doesn't mean it's going to work, but you have to go to the right paths for it to work. But it won't hurt anything. So, anyways, so you're going to take that communication wire from the ESC that should be your current output and put it on your CRT pad on your flight controller, and that should work. The only other thing too is, and you shouldn't need it on it. Usually it's off. I don't even know if it's in here anymore. Current. It used to be an analog current. Yeah. You might have to pay attention to this setting under battery and voltage here too, depending on what you're going to. It should be, you should be here, this onboard AC, which is the default. But if it's not working, if you do take the signal from the ESC to that CRT pad, you shouldn't need virtual, but it doesn't hurt to ever give it a shot if it's not working out for you. If it's not working. And that should be it. It should automatically work. Back to here. I got the I term later. So Brandon is saying a lot of his quads will set the I term, the drift wobble slider, to a 0.5. Yeah, lower I term. As long as you don't need, as long as it doesn't feel too drifty for you, lower I term is fine. Which a lot of freestyle pilots, you're not doing like orbits or Jacob's ladder in races. It's mostly racing pilots that they need kind of higher I gains to keep it tracking well on kind of more sweeping, fast, full throttle sweeping move. Freestyle pilots aren't doing like full throttle sweeping moves generally, so you don't need a lot of I gain. A lot more people are freestyle than anything else. Willie FPV says, I'd like to ask you about the RPM filter. The Crux 3 Crazy BX ESC updated to Blue Jay, but on Betaflight Motors tab, after 3 seconds after connecting, all my 100% errors disappear. What could be the reason? after 3 seconds after connecting, all my 100% errors. So if you have, I guess on the timing, these are going to say 100% error. Like I'm connected to a flight controller, but I don't have any ESC on it. So they're going to say 100%. When you plug in the quad to power up the ESC, these should then drop to 0. What you need to be checking, and I don't have one connected here, but props off, what you need to be checking is to take the, with props off, check this on, quad's all plugged in, all powered up, so the motors are going to spin. Check that, move these up. These need to stay, I would say at least less than 10%. If they are not, make sure you have the latest BlueJay like there's something wrong. They should. So there's something wrong with the communication. I would check if those do not stay below 10%, which that's even way pushing it. It should really stay below like a couple percent, like 2 or 3. But if they are going above 10%, I would check your wiring to make sure you have the latest BlueJay firmware. Maybe even go back to an older version of a firmware on BlueJay or whatnot. But again, and they're going to be 100% until the battery's plugged in, and then you want to have the motor spinning to really judge what these numbers are. So hopefully that helps. What could be the cause? If it's not, if it's all of them, it's oh. I haven't had that in such a long time. Bad wiring connection, which is, I mean, that's kind of rare. Bad firmware or just the bad ESC. One of those. I would go, you can't, and you obviously you don't want the answer to be bad ESC. So I would check the wiring, check the firmware, make sure it's the latest, or go back, depending if it is the latest, try going back to an older release. And or try different, because there's BlueJay firmware, there's BOHELIS firmware for the older ESCs, so you can try all those. Jason Black asks, any tips on 4.3.2 to 4.3.4 data migration? Not really. The biggest tip is I would go, there's a website for to clean your CLI. I wouldn't worry about it all that much. And to be honest, typically I will just do a data dump. I'll go into my presets tab here. If you're fairly, fairly adept in this hobby, you probably can do this, where you just save a backup, and then I just go from 4.3 to 4.4. I'll just load that backup. You will get a ton of errors that some things won't work, be renamed, things like that. If it's an error that's kind of good, that means it's just going to use the default. So like if you have a setting that it errors out, you might have to reset that up. Like you get a lot of OSD errors and other things. The biggest thing you need to watch, so this is the biggest tip, the anti-gravity. I wish this would have been done differently, because I feel like when we change the behavior of a variable, like how it works, and you'll see that this number in Betaflights now, the default is 8, where the default used to be 3. I wish Chris Thompson would have renamed the variable, just -n or something, like in the background, so you don't even see it here, so that it would error out. But when you do data migrate, that will take your old value and put it into here. So make sure that you come back in, if you data migrate from 4.3 to 4.4, the big things are, these PID items. Make sure you go and check your anti-gravity variable, that you set this to an 8 and kind of restart on that. If you've adjusted it, you'll have to retune it. Or if you have goofed around for some settings, you have to redo it. Everything else is the same in how this all, all the main settings for flight control. You might get some weird things where like, oh, my OSD, well, you just go fix that kind of stuff. That's not going to make the quad go crazy. Obviously, I caveat that whole thing on, you're going to do the backup from, like, some of the stuff is like, don't be dumb. No offense to anybody, but you're going to do the backup from 4.3. You're going to load it on 4.4. You're going to get a bunch of errors. You're going to kind of look at that, make sure that anti-gravity thing's set. But the first time you fly in 4.4, don't do a hand launch. Like, go put it out. First take the props off, arm it, move it left and right, make sure everything's cool, like nothing's freaking weird. Make sure when you disarm, it disarms. Put the props back on, go put it out. If you really want, sometimes, if I've done other things where like testing firmware, a good thing to do sometimes when you're testing firmware and you're not sure how it's going to go with the flight, go put it under a tree. It's not going to fly up away. It's going to hit the tree. Go put it out, step way back, arm it, move left, move right, up, down, take off, take it easy, go check it out, make sure you're feeling comfortable, and then go for it. So be careful, but a lot of times, again, I just say that. Like I said, all the flight performance things that are kind of critical to it flying well are the same between 4.4 and 4.3, other than anti-gravity. I do have a video. I can make a link to that here. That goes through flashing up, and there is a website you can go to that kind of takes out the things that you shouldn't migrate forward. But I think in some cases that website's causing more trouble than it's worth. I have to go see if it's been updated to specifically be for 4.3 to 4.4. So I just do what I just said. I just take this stuff forward. Vice versa, FPV says, do I get a good tune with the basement tuning method? If you are banging the sticks, if you're comfortable and you're banging the sticks, like giving them a good, and it's not so much full rate, but you're really moving quick to get that stepped input. Yes. I don't know if it's the best tune. I would still go out. I think it's a good method for, it's raining outside, you're trying to do something, just do a basement. I think that's where Brian, if I'm not mistaken, kind of invented that, right? That basement tune, because he, with the PID toolbox and everything, he kind of realized that I just need to do stepped inputs. So I can do that in my basement. He lives in Canada. It's like cold and whatever, it's raining. So and it works. Especially for like cine lifters, big heavy quads. I don't know if he's doing that with cine lifters though in his basement. If he is, he's a brave man. But yes, they're stepped inputs all the same. The only difference is, I kind of doubt people are doing full rate flips and rolls, which is, testing your tune against your max rate. I would assume it gets really close. I think that, and there's some things you're not going to get from the basement tune. Like, let's go back to here. Like the basement tune will help you figure in how much of the damping versus tracking slider you need. But it is not going to help you tune, as far as I'm aware. I don't know how it would. It does not help you tune your drift wobble. I mean, the way I drift during wobble is you got to do a full punch out, drop throttle, and see if it wobbles around when you drop throttle. You're not doing that in your basement. So that doesn't help for this. And it's not going to help you. I guess it can, but man, you got to be careful. I guess you can keep moving your master multiplier up in your basement. I'm talking like a 5-inch. Obviously, if it's a whoop, who cares? But if it's a 5-inch in your basement, you can keep moving this up. And when you arm at some point, it will flutter. But I tell you, once you are at that flutter point, you are on the you might have I'm working with some of the devs, Chris Thompson, one of the guys. We do test code and stuff like that. This was a long time ago where we kind of built our relationship. One time he sent pictures and it was his ceiling with four little holes in it, little divots. Well, those four little divots you might have experience on. Those are the nuts of the quad hitting. It was a bottom mount battery. Went up and smacked the ceiling. So in tuning your master multiplier inside, I wouldn't do that. There's no way I'm doing that. So I don't I think it helps you. Basement tune method helps you. These two it can help you kind of do this one, but not against full rate. You're a brave man if you're moving your master multiplier up to the flutter point and then backing it back down in your basement, but more power to you. And then I don't know how you do the drift wobble, or I guess you can these have to do with how much damping versus tracking you can have on pitch versus roll, because obviously these are all of them. This is all the PIDs. These are just the pitch axis you can see here. That's just moving the D gains on the pitch, and this is doing just everything here on the pitch for feed forward in these two. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. I think it's something gets you there, but I go outside and do it to get everything. Let's see what else we got here. Is there a video? I tried updating to 4.4, but it didn't work out, so I'm back to 4.3.2. That's a shame. Team Low FPV, thanks for the feedback on the 5-inch preset. Yeah, if you can post something or send me something to that email address, that would be appreciated. What questions we have here? Yeah, so Mark it zero ask, is the preset backup tab the same as a diff all? I know it's a diff all. Let's look. I think it's a diff all. So I have some settings in this. Let's do this. Because really the difference between a diff and a diff all is these like the rates tab. So it should set this to Betaflight. Change that. Hit yes. I'm pretty sure to save. Save that to the desktop. Download. Save. I'll just do a diff all. Save file. I'm pretty sure, but let's just double check. All right, so here's the diff all. Here's the save. Yeah. Yeah, it's a diff all. So the reason we know it's a diff all is because it has, I could have just looked after I saved it, but it has these. So if you just do a diff, you don't get all the different profile types. But if you do a diff all, you do get those. If you just do a diff, you don't. So it's definitely a diff. It's not a dump or anything like that. But yeah, you can see. So it'll capture everything. Oh, so H prompt ask, I know in Betaflight adjustments tab, you can put a rate profile switch selection on a switch. How do you put a PID profile selection on a switch? You can't. Um, so unless something changed, I'm pretty sure it has not, because I asked this before a long time ago. Adjustments. So you're looking here at like aux1, and then you're looking at rate selection, right? And that's what you're using. But there's nothing for PID profiles. And the reason is it's a safety feature. Whether you, I'm not saying I agree, I necessarily endorse it, but I'm saying this is the logic. That mid-flight, you shouldn't be changing your PIDs and whatnot. Filters, PIDs, filters, a bunch of stuff. Obviously, PIDs profile has a bunch of stuff in it. That the devs, at least, so the dev that I talked to that was against it's really not involved anymore. So this was 2 or 3 years ago. And he was it changes like who's recently in Betaflight's history. You know, it started with Boris, right? And he was the guy. He developed Betaflight. It was his thing. So what he thought and what he wanted mattered. He was the lead. That then changed to Mike Keller. Mike Keller was king for a long time, like 5 years. That has switched recently, and Mike had people that the people that were kind of, I would say, lead devs were like eTracer, Bruce, Diehards. I can't think of his. There was just different people like 3 years ago. That is somewhat, I think, in the last, I would say, how long is it? 2 years? 2 years kind of changed. So Jason Blackman is King. If you know Zach, he's kind of in there as well. Very influential now. And which is Sugarcane. And Mike or Chris Thompson, which is Chris has been around forever and is awesome. He is very influential as well. So the influencers up there. So I don't know if that where that would stand now, but as of when I asked about it 4 years ago, it was like, no, we're not doing that. So you could put it in there as a request. I think it's an uphill battle, and there could be things that like secondary effects, like how's the PID controller going to handle you just changing the gains within, you know, 0.00125 seconds? You just doubled the gains. Like, what's that going to do to the controller? Because you got to remember, it's, you're flipping a switch, but to the flight controller, it's sampling 8,000 times per second. So within 1/8,000th of a second, what if you go from D gains of 40 to 80? Like, nevertheless, the change in your gains could be off and like poof, flies nowhere. But how does the controller deal with even move the gains up a couple points within such a short period of time? That could really throw so there could be things like that where it's just, I know what you're thinking you want, but it might not work out. And then there's ways to overcome that, I guess I would say as well. Like it could be that it transitions, you could code it to do whatever you want, right? So it could transition the gains over a period of time. And there's ways you could do it where you could say, okay, well, I want to do it. I'm going to make it available. I'm going to have it transition the gains over like a 2 or 3 second period. Only if the gains are no different from a 5 or 10% difference or some sort of. So there's ways around, I think, some of the, if there's big concerns over switching the gains so fast and switching settings, that you could put some safeguards in there. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to then at that point, who's going to code that? Because if you have somebody that's saying, hey, I really like to do that, I really am passionate about it, but I can't code it. Well, now you got to convince somebody that I can code it and get them passionate about it. Because once I talk about all those things, like I talked about the 10% and all that other jazz, I could take some time. So you got to get somebody that's interested in it. All right, so we are at 12 o'clock here. I think I'm going skiing this afternoon. So I'll wrap it up. Let me see if there's any other questions here. Hey Mark, what's your thoughts on the AM32 VL Heli thermal? Yeah, Chris Rosser saw his stuff. Looks like AM32 is the way. I wish there was more ESCs that were produced with AM32 on them already. The more I'm in this hobby, the more I'm seeing that, everybody thought that, hey, a couple years ago, companies producing stuff was the most sustainable. I don't think so. I think the most sustainable thing in FPV is open source. Like ELRS is going to take over. Betaflight has always been king for a long time now. I think AM32 is open source BL Heli. It's a 32 open source. I think that's going to take over. So I think it obviously based on his his results, looks like that showed some warrant to betterment there. To the moon, where to the drywall, exactly. Are your custom motor mixes still relevant today with modern Betaflight? Yeah, if you're really out, so that's Dizzy FPV asks that because of the if your pattern is way different than an X pattern, yes. To some extent, though, PID tuning it kind of gets you the same result with varying between the pitch and the roll axes. Yes, between the pitch and the roll. And then Craig Jordan asks, UAV Tech, I have a 250. I'm tuning and I'm having lots of D-term noise / gyro cap 1000 microfarad low SER ESR. Quad fly is great. Build is clean. Using a Blizzard F745 all-in-one. As soon as you say to me all-in-one, I'm skeptical. And 6S, all-in-one and 6S makes me super skeptical with the, oh my God, 1800 motors. Well, good. So if you're having lots of D-term noise, so my guess, Craig Jordan, is it's kind of two things. You're saying you have a lot of D-term noise, but then you're saying if with the quad fly is great. Well, if it flies great, then don't worry about it. Just fly it. But with that aside, if I would be skeptical, I would be running a log. All in one flight controllers that I have flown, they're problematic, and especially with 6S. So I would do a log with gyro scale enabled. You're welcome to throw it up on the Discord and I'll take a look at it. Tag me and I'll help you through that. But many of the times, it's tough to. A Blizzard is a good one though. The iFlight Blizzard is a good one, so maybe it's all right. But I would double check that. If you're having gyro issues and noise issues, it's probably electrical noise. That's my guess. And last one here that got tagged on. Yeah, drop the master. Yep, that's good advice there, Brandon. Last one here, and I'll end with this. UAV Tech, how come anti-gravity is set so high in your Cine Lifter preset? I think it's about 10. Any hints on tuning that? Yeah, so Cine lifters are way pitch heavy with that big. I'm assuming you have like a red Komodo on the front of that sucker. So they have a lack of authority on that. That usually causes issues. 10's not that high anymore. 8 is the default. So 10 is conservative. It's a little bit bumped up on the newest preset. It was that high in 4.3 and it needed to be in my experience with flying them. In 4.3 to tune it, you would basically go up, do a quick throttle drop, and if it would flutter like brrr, then your anti-gravity is too high and you got to be cautious about that. So you can kind of move your anti-gravity up so you reduce nose bobble. Whether that's that important to you, in your Cine Lifter flying, are you really going up and chopping throttle a lot, to actually get your shots? Maybe it's not that important. But if you wanted to tune it, that's how you do it. You do need to be cautious, though, as you bump that up, make little changes, because you'll get to a spot that once you drop throttle quick and it will start to oscillate, it could keep oscillating. So you got to be cautious. Usually for tuning for a cine lifter, hopefully you have a analog for the camera itself. Like I have a 3D printed red Komodo thing with a bunch of weight in it to simulate, because I don't actually have one of those, and definitely don't want to be flying one of those around while you're goofing around with settings. So take your $5,000 camera off, put a, I used to do it with just a rock, put a rock on there or something, or an analog for it with rice in it, and then give it a shot. Okay, well, thanks everybody. 12 o'clock. I'm sure the kids are saying, where is he? We got to go skiing. Appreciate everybody coming out. We're a little past the stream. Hopefully this was helpful. And, you know, get out there and enjoy some flying today. Again, thanks everybody for stopping out, and we'll see you here on the next one. See ya.